I'm going to talk about the longest game. Longest in which dimension, you can maybe think about at the end. But it also is the first database game. So EVE Online is the first game in the world made on a database. I was in conferences like this actually debating with people whether using a database to make a game was a good idea. It was a good idea to us, mostly because we had never made a game. And you look at it, okay, it's a capitalistic murder-death simulator. It seems important to store the stuff securely somewhere. Now, people use databases to make games, but they are not really making database game. Like, EVE Online literally can just be played in the database. It's all stored procedures called by a little simulation step and fancy graphical UI. The game actually just ticks away in a database. Like, there's a web page version of EVE Online where you just call store procedure. It would be very useful for botting. We don't release that version. So think of EVE Online as the first database game. So when you were listening to Justin talk about like all the theories of blockchain and Tetris on a blockchain as the game, this is the database version. So I'm also going to talk a bit about like why I think it has been running for such a long time. And it really, really isn't about the fact that it is a database game. So when you think about like how to make autonomous worlds that live forever, sure, the computer, the hardware is important, but somebody caring about it actually is the most important. If you make a digital forest with trees are falling and nobody's there to watch it, is it really happening in a way that anyone cares? And there is something about EVE Online, which is it's powered by love. And I know it's like famous for being a capitalistic murder-death hellscape of terrible user entry and torture. But there is this counter effect to it, which I'm going to talk a little about. But before we go into that, I'm just going to talk about it a bit sort of in stats. So this is kind of EVE Online today. It turned 20 years old in May. There are 1.1 million active characters. This would be daily active wallets in your terminology. We have some ideas of how many humans are behind these characters, but that is largely a guess. 37 million characters have been created in these 20 years. The daily trades on our market system are about 1 million. These were the stats of the day. It's about 10,000 transactions in the database, which is the stored procedure framework. This would be smart contract calls in kind of blockchain terminology. Total number of trades per year, probably last year, and 250 million spaceship built, most of which have been destroyed. The game is made in Iceland, so we hold the, to us, impressive stat of having made a game that is bigger than our country. Also, the other large industry in Iceland, the growing of sheep, is also bigger than the country. So, sheeps and EVE Online, yay. We have also made many other games around the IP. We made mobile games, VR games, shooters. We're actually making another shooter. You can play it in December. So, rough estimate, like 60 million people have dabbled in the EVE universe concretely by looking into a game, and probably another 200 million have read about the stories that happen in EVE Online. This is us at kind of this stage. So this is us when we were making EVE Online. We also had this weird imposter syndrome I observe in this crowd of just like, what really are we? Justin used weird, crazy, etc. Because we were making a computer game in a country that never made a computer game. We have not even met a computer game developer. We have not even seen a computer game developer from afar. So we kind of thought we were an indie rock band. Music is quite big in Iceland, Björk, Sigur Rós. So we thought that this is the indie rock band phase. You totally see the album here. This is us in the Blue Lagoon. This is also just to put it in perspective when we're making the game. This is me seriously playing EVE Online in my paternity leave. That's my daughter helping me to mind. I can tell you stories about this moment. I'll do it later. This is her today. So yeah, that's how long EVE Online is. Like, adults have been born. This literally is the first version. This is a version of EVE Online June 2000. We were immensely proud. I was CTO at the time. This is the whole system working. Okay, now we just have to make it 3D. Creative director of EVE Online was not very happy, but I was ecstatic. There's even, if you know Icelandic, there's the first exploit is discovered there in the chat. And this is it today. This is a user photography of a fleet fight in EVE Online. We have the Guinness World Record in the biggest spaceship soup ever made. There's about 8,000 people which are concurrently shooting each other with lots of time dilation. We have also done a lot with update the graphics. These are literally the graphics from when it comes out, and here's kind of the same scene made today. So to Justin's comment on like some things just get automatically better, like don't worry too much about the graphics, like this to this to this to this is largely just detail that gets worked out. It's really getting the fundamentals right. We have incremented the game a lot. Here's some highlight of expansions. We were releasing one yesterday, actually. It's another kind of incremental story of like, if you really know what you're doing. Not that we really know what we're doing. That would be a overstatement if you follow EVE Online. But some things just automatically increment almost autonomously. But what the players have built, EVE Online isn't fully unpermissioned, but there's a lot of permission to do fucked up shit in EVE Online. And so when we count, these are the total number of man years that EVE people have been logged into EVE doing EVE people things. By some measure, it's about enough to build 10 Pyramid of Giza. And what is that doing to the world economy? Is that a good thing? I think it is, and I'm going to tell you why. Obviously, people are not building pyramids. They're mostly building titans and destroying them. This is a picture of the first titan being built. Its name is Steve. It was blown shortly thereafter. So we look at our players as co-creators, and that is something we have been using that rhetoric very much. Everything they do is actually what makes the world news. When we, CCP, do stuff in EVE Online, largely nobody cares. Here is like the BBC talking about space robbery, like as if is it real news. And this is a very famous story that almost kick-started the game. EVE Online was very obscure in the beginning, but this story kind of broke it, and it was the players that did it. Routinely, people use this element that we have like a, what should I call it, a staple coin inside EVE called Plex, which you can add into EVE. You actually can't take it out, but people use the exchange rate to make these kind of stories. This spaceship fight was worth $300,000. So we're quite familiar with all this kind of financialization of everything, even if you have to go through a crooked backdoor to actually take money out of EVE Online. We're now at the point where people are writing history books about EVE. There's no 2 volumes. Volume 1, Empires of EVE, first decade. Volume 2, second decade-ish. There's a documentary recently released, Down the Rabbit Hole. It's 6 hours. If you want to get the full talk about this, you watch this on the plane ride home. It is really good. It's unfortunately also accurate. So think about that. It's not always been pretty in EVE Online. We've had several things here, examples of riots. People were shooting the statue because we were doing stupid stuff to EVE. We thankfully have had the wisdom to listen sometimes, and here's the broken statue we put in the game as a reminder. So, like building monuments about EVE Online is also a side business. This is a thing we built in Reykjavik 10 years ago. It has all the names of all the EVE players there on aluminium plaques. We actually upgraded it to 2 levels. We're building our own sort of pyramid on the Harper of EVE Online. There's no the second decade step of the people that are played in the first decade, the second decade. Get it? So, how do you create something that is a game that that people want to play for 20 years? And some people literally have played every single day for 20 years. It's thousands of them. So, I mean, people just say, like, make a fun game and build a community. And, okay, it's obviously largely true, but it's maybe not a very useful generalization. Design a game that people want to play. I mean, you could argue whether EVE is that game even to begin with. This is the learning curve, very mathematically accurate based on learning curves of other games. This is what it takes to play it by the expression of people that do play it. And this literally is our marketing message. So it's maybe not like the most important thing, or at least find the version of your game that some people really, really love. And the fact that some people hate it and some people don't care maybe doesn't matter that much. We certainly did that. We really just wanted to make a game that we wanted to play. And building a community is something that people talk about a lot here. And we definitely have been in the process of building a community, but it has taken us decades to actually figure out what actually is a community. Because most games just have fans. They don't really have a community. There isn't really a community in the sense of what community means. And I'm gonna kind of bring into this the model we kind of use to think about how do you really kind of on some generalization build this. So there are these two elements we've discovered from interviewing EVE players. And it is about this. I feel that I learn skills through EVE Online, which are valuable to me as a person outside of the game in any other context. And people do very strongly feel that they have gotten new friends because of EVE. It's not reinforcing existing friendship, but really genuinely make new friends. 73% of EVE players claim that they've made a friend because of EVE Online. And medical studies show that having a friend and having friends is the most important thing for humans to do. It is the predictor of health, happiness, and longevity. It outweighs all negative factors. If you, the more friends you have, the longer and happier your life will be. And here are some sort of anecdotal stories. I've been able to use EVE to meet other veterans and really have someone to talk to. There's a lot of people that have gone to war, have PSD, other elements, really love playing EVE. It takes longer to talk about why that is. I am holding off my wedding until I can fly my court mate and his family over. I've been able to pull myself out of a very dark hole because there were people there to help me. So it's even turned into this meme. So when you ask EVE players what is the best ship to fly in EVE Online, the best ship is friendship. And this really is true. Like if you have a Titan and no friends, it really is meaningless. And having friends is a big problem in the world. There's something about the world today which is destroying and not creating new friendships. Like it's called the loneliness epidemic. I have my own theories that it has to do with large cities are not very efficient at doing this. Doesn't really matter. For some reason, EVE is good at doing it. And we actually found this formula for how you make a friend. We're engineers, like, you get it. So it's these elements. It's proximity, frequency, duration, and intensity. And this is where EVE shines. The fact that it is a murder-death hellscape really means that if you have a friend, that friendship is really tested. There is both the temptation and the incentive to break friendships, and there is a lot of help you will need from playing the game. This forms and crucibilizes friendships like nothing I've seen other than having even more terrible things happen to you in your life. And we have researched this. How do you become an EVE player? because it's not our created new player experience that make you become an EVE player. That's largely not effective. We've worked on it for 20 years and incrementally made it slightly better. So it's usually this: somebody kills you in EVE Online, and you either have the motivation to get revenge and the understanding of why it happened, and you enter a mastery curve, or somebody comes to you and helps you understand what you did wrong, and then pulls you along the way. And that moment is magical. When a random stranger helps you in terrible need, the sort of the Good Samaritan story really is true. Like, when you are the most vulnerable and somebody helps you, that is when the friendship spark is born. Increasingly in EVE, it is the killer that then does this to you. Like, if you were to go and look into EVE Online on the year 20, they have found this is the best way to create an EVE player. So they will literally come and kill you, explain to you in great detail what you did wrong, and then give you the money to buy another spaceship. This is no joke, what happens. Because most of people that play EVE Online self-identify as helpers. You would think like it would be combat, which is, it's number 2. You would think it would be competition, shockingly low. It really is the people that like to help others. That is the majority of EVE players. And they are by far the most satisfied. So think about it. You make a terrible environment, objectively terrible, terrible UX, terrible death penalty, and even a community that on the outside looks fairly hostile. It's mostly people that love to help other people. It makes sense when you think about it. Like, okay, if there's a lot of people that need help, obviously there's like content for the helpers. But my God, did we not expect that when we ran the experiment? And this extends, of course, people like helping all over the world. Community of EVE Online is always helping people all over the world. Here's like where we use this stablecoin idea to kind of leave a footprint on Earth. So EVE players, with help of this system, have collected $1.2 million just to help with disasters on the planet. Often the relationships turn into other forms of relationship. Marriages that are born from EVE Online is almost a thing. People used to come to me and ask me to marry them, which was super weird. The first time I really asked them, especially the woman, "This is really what you want?" They really did. And now the Space Pope does the marrying. This is Charles. He is the Space Pope of EVE Online. He works at NASA as his day job. And he is kind of anointed by the player base to marry people and other popey things. So when I talk about love, I'm really meaning it. This aspect of EVE Online is why it has been alive for 20 years. And you can often think about, okay, how can you make love a design principle? Like how is that a design actionable thing? And the best way to think about it, I'm not claiming it to be accurate, but it's a good framework to think about it, that loving somebody is a decision. You're deciding to do it. It's not causation, it's a decision. And it is the decision to will the good of another person. It's very easy to express this in relationship you have. The relationship between parents and children is probably the most obvious love situation. People really love their children. I have children. I really love them. And I really am going to invest myself in willing them good. Very complicated to do it as a parent because you think it's about like pampering and sheltering them. And to the case of EVE Online, that's maybe not the best way. But willing it is the way to do it. Like the implement can be hit and miss. But think about it, like how do you create a game where actually willing the good of another is a way to win in that game? Because EVE Online is that game. If you will the good of others, you win. The other part of the equation is skills. So I've been Eve has given me a project management job, and well, I'm just gonna skip. There's a lot. It's largely about spreadsheets. Like if you make such a complicated game that you need an Excel sheet to play it, it is really good in the real world. Excel really runs the world. And we kind of see this if we ask people, what have you really learned from EVE Online? 33% Excel spreadsheets, market and economics. Leadership, you would not necessarily guess that the game at all teaches you leadership, teamwork, and marketing. Look at this, marketing is higher than programming. Maybe not the stereotype of an EVE player, but marketing in EVE Online is obviously memes and propaganda. So it's the most effective tool to win a war in EVE Online is memes and propaganda. It's not really the programming. So we are now laying tracks for EVE Online into the third decade. We were celebrating that in September. It's full of like awesome stuff coming. We're adding another shooter. We're kind of turning EVE Online into a platform and whatnot. But there's this aspect of EVE Online where if EVE the game is this tiny planet in this picture, this is kind of the actual game. What is actually happening here is all the third-party software that has been written to make EVE work. So EVE has an API access gateway, and about 4,000 people have written acres of software in the past 20 years. You can look at awesome EVE on GitHub. It's kind of a good. And then there's a whole constellation of stuff that goes on. So many events and charities and media and merchandise and books, etc., documentaries, that it's just like an ecosystem of stuff. So as we have been thinking, okay, this is kind of the organic emergent version of it. Is there a better way to frame all this in a way where we take the experience of what can emerge if you get all the fundamentals right, and while we will just continue into the third decade, EVE Online is a database game. It will just stay in a database. It will do cool databasey things. Is there a way to have it live forever? Like this is something we've been talking about like for a decade. Like how can you make EVE Online live forever? Not just outlive us, not live for decades, just really, really live forever. Live forever in the style of the pyramids, the Chinese wall and the Bible and Elvis. Like how can it live forever? And then we've been thinking about these things and talking to Justin, what is now years, I think. So if EVE Online is a city made of wood built in the forest, can we make another city made of stone built in the mountains? You can kind of see the elves and the dwarves here. Not to make one better than the other per se, but two cities must be a way to then build a city made of dreams built in heaven. We're not quite there yet. We don't have the computer for it. I just learned earlier. But at some point, it is not a database or a blockchain. There is this third computer that's on its way, apparently. Decades from now, we can build a third one. So building the second one is probably a valuable journey to the third one. And we have like announced this thing, which is called Project Awakening. I have a lot of sauce it's making here about that. As you see here, like me and Justin are coordinating quotes. Okay. Well, I'm at the stage now I can quote myself. So this is literally a video of me sleep-deprived early 2003. Tried to make it work. It's very highly recommend this YouTube video. It's cringy to watch, but still it was there. And there I actually say this. Other games focus on having people go up against monsters, maybe in small groups, whereas EVE is focused on building a society and supplying the tools and the rules to operate. So EVE Online is a pretty good sort of city made of wood approach to this. But I mean, it's largely not immutable. It's largely permissioned. It's largely many disgusting things. We're all here to change. And I'm all for that. And how do we then like take all these newfangled tools and really get us closer to that? I don't think it's quite the city in the clouds built in heaven, but the city in the mountains, we're here to build it. Then I have a lot of sort of stuff about Hammurabi, me and Gabe Newell, which I'm largely going to skip. but this probably all familiar to you. But I am going to end it. See, wow, I really underestimated the time, didn't I? Shocking. The longest game presentation is too long. No, I'm going to leave you with this. So we're running a playtest in December. You can QR code away and join. And I have this question for the assembly or pre-post assembly. Is a PvP MMO on-chain a good idea? I do think it's a good idea because by creating all this conflict, we generated love. But at some point, we might have taken it too far. When your real existence on Earth is almost on the line, is that too much? So that's my question. So, thank you.